أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I begin, as I always begin, in the name of Allah, whose grace I seek in this and all other matters. Assalamu alaikum.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I begin, as I always begin, in the name of Allah, whose grace I seek in this and in all other matters. I ask Allah's forgiveness for any errors that I might make due to the frailty of being human. Happy New Year. I think I've sent that message out before, but I'm sending it out because this is my first time to go on for what I'm tentatively going to call free speech. This will allow me to discuss in greater detail or in, sort of a less even formal sort of living news way to just kind of do like some video chats about certain topics. So some topics are more in-depth than others, and this might be one of them. I have been inspired by my sheikh in recent weeks to actually respond to one of the questions that I got asked on the Patreon page about the fact that I say I do not literally believe in heaven and hell. And I kind of shied away from this for a while, the reason being that I kind of have to explain a lot about theology and rhetoric from my perspective in order to talk about the specifics. But I have covered this topic before in my writing. It's just maybe a little bit subtle or obscure because it is one of those type of topics. And for me to really respond to it, I feel like I have to give a little bit of background. That background is going to be linguistics, rhetorics, hermeneutics, theology, how all these things come in my mind, and therefore how I, as a Qur'an scholar in particular, how I respond to the Qur'anic discussion of the phenomena of eschatology. And eschatology is the details about the afterlife. So our life here on the planet Earth is the main goal of the Qur'an, that is for us to lead a good life. And one of the references that the Qur'an gives with regard to, maybe you might say an incentive or motivation for living that good life is the sense of dying and then being resurrected to face a judgment. The consequence of that judgment will determine if one goes to heaven or hell, or even to the barzakh, the zone in between, which is not often elaborated on, but it does exist in the Quran, and it is discussed by traditional theologians and Quranic scholars and Sufis. And so so this is a larger topic, and at some point I can talk about different features in that whole topic, but let's just go straight to heaven and hell as one of the aspects, because I was raised Christian, my father was a Methodist minister, and we definitely were fed a very literal understanding of heaven and hell. And when I became Muslim 50 years ago, I pretty much carried that over with me. Everything that was sort of replicated from the Bible, the Injil, into the Quran and thus Islam, I kind of just carried it over, based on what I had understood being raised within, that Abrahamic umbrella. But over time, and certainly in time, with a great deal of investment into the studies of Islam and the way to fulfill the Sirat al-Mustaqim, the way what it means to fulfill the straight path and all of that, I had some challenges to some of the ways of thinking. And the way that I came to resolve the challenges is actually quite simple. Humans use language. Language is a symbolic system for the purpose of communication. And the reason why I say symbolic is to understand the trajectory between what is literal and what is metaphorical. So, you know how people always say literally, and 99% of the time they don't use it correctly? Usually people say literally to mean very. So when somebody says it was literally hot as hell, they are not talking literal. They're talking very hot. I love it. This is why I'm grinning at it, you know. But in terms of theology and what we call alam al-shahada versus alam al-ghaib, the alam al-shahada is that which we can see and taste and touch, and the alam al-ghaib is beyond. It is ghaib from our perspective. We cannot see it, taste it, touch it. We can feel it. There is a kind of another sense, you know, sixth sense, but let me not get distracted by that, okay? Whenever we use our symbolic language system, we are representing some real thing, whether we have experienced that thing, seen that thing, tasted that thing, or touched that thing. We are representing that thing through language. It is not the thing itself. I remember a literature teacher talking about a student complaining, you know, that they were sick of these metaphors about the sun and that they wanted some literal sun. And he was like, if you want the literal sun, I hope you're, you know, 98,000 miles away, or 98, whatever number of miles it is away, 1,000 million, whatever. So in other words, you don't want the literal sun because you can't live even within less proximity to that literal sun than, you know, the 98,000 or million miles that we are. The literal sun is the actual sun, the thing itself that we see, you know, each day, or that brings us daylight. And I find that when people talk about all the aspects of alam al-ghaib, the unseen in Islam, we are faced with the consequence that we only have the one human language, and by that we only have the symbolic representation of that human language. We cannot manifest a thing by saying the thing. That belongs to Allah. In the Quran, it says all you have to do is say to a thing, kun, fayakun. It says to a thing, be, and it is. So that's the illocutionary act, that with the speech, the thing becomes, you know, whatever it is. And humans use what Kenneth Burke refers to as everyday ordinary language to refer to the transcendent or the alam al-ghaib. And a lot that happens in language tricks us into thinking that we have the real thing. And as such, people can, you know, life or death kind of go after certain things. For example, I use both the masculine and feminine pronoun, he and she, and even sometimes it or they in English, so that's 4 of them, to refer to Allah, because I know that Allah is not literally male or female. So trying to get at that through a language that designates everything in a binary means that I have to toggle between the two gender of the English language, he and she, to try to break the gridlock of thinking that Allah is male, let alone believing that Allah is male, because I don't believe Allah is female either. Only I never have to say that, because that is the dominant heterosexual presumption. The dominant heterosexual presumption that Allah is not female. And so you only have to explain it, i.e. language, you only have to explain it when you say she. If you say he, people just take it for granted. And that's a problem, because then we take it literal. So that's where I am. It is a function of how I relate to language, as well as how I relate language to alam al-ghaib, the world of the unseen. And so maybe I should just tell you a little bit about my evolution away from a literal heaven and hell. First, by saying heaven is perceived as a reward for doing the right thing, you know, while we're on this earth, or for being good. And hell is a punishment. Both heaven and hell are described in very shahada alim shahada terms. In other words, they are described in terms that we understand because they are parts of the description of our everyday ordinary world today. So heaven is all this pleasure and sweetness and luxury and comfort, and hell is all this punishment and fire, torment, despair, etc. And so in Qur'an and Woman, I talk about this a little bit. The expressions of that which brings you the most despair are used in the Qur'an in order to incite a sense of weariness or leeriness, like I don't want to go there because it's something from which I experience despair. I don't want to be burnt in a fire, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, the other one is used as an incentive. Yes, I want that. You know, I want rivers that flow underneath, milk and honey and beautiful maidens and beautiful youth and lovely garments and gold and silver adornment and lush gardens. Of course, right? We want that. So for me, as I was growing and learning, and even as I was writing Qur'an and Woman, I was coming to a place where I then compared this metaphorical language, drawn as it was, according to Kenneth Berg's understanding, drawn as it was from my Shahada world, the world, Alam Shahada, the world that you can see and taste and touch. I was drawn to a relationship between those words, those descriptions, and what we know about our physical universe. Understand that the word universe can be both metaphorical and be physical. So let's just take the physical. By that I mean we're on the planet Earth. We live in a solar system with 9 major planets and a single sun. Our particular planet has a single moon. And yet these planets, as they go around, they have a relationship to each other. And not only that, they have a history. And by that I mean they have a physical record of how far back they go, and certain theories about how they started. And those theories, some of those theories have been confirmed by watching other galaxies or solar systems as they are evolving, even as we speak, or as the light reaches us with regard to them. And the idea that heaven is a place above and hell is a place below cannot literally be the case. We have already, with our human instruments, traveled pretty far above, and we didn't come to heaven's gate. How far we've gone in, I don't know, the ocean, whatever, but we have also explored in that direction. And one of the things we figured out is that if you have a single planet, like the one that we do, and again, there are people who believe that the Earth is flat because they got other theories going on. But in my case, I live in Asia, and I definitely know I'm on the other side of the planet from my family and stuff, and I've traveled there enough times, seen the curve of the Earth and all that to know that it's pretty round. So we pretty much know, no matter how far quote unquote down you go, you are not coming to this place called hell. So that's the first thing that got dispelled, the idea that heaven and hell are physical places, and that we will go to a physical place after we die and are resurrected and go through judgment. That was the first thing that went out the window. So what do you replace it with? That's the thing. Because there is no reason for the Qur'an to repeat ad nauseum all of this discouragement with regards to certain behavior that would end you up in hell, or all of this encouragement that would end you up in a place called heaven. There's no reason for the Qur'an to go into this into great detail unless there is some meaning to it. And so for me, the meaning came through the words about our emotional responses. So despair and pleasure or joy, right? So the pleasures of paradise are described in things that people do find pleasurable. In Qur'an and Woman, I discussed this with regards to the metaphor of the Hurul Ain, what they call the Houris, and the patriarchal and Arab preoccupation with these fair-skinned, dark-eyed, luscious females as an incentive, because they weren't an incentive to me. It's like, oh, I don't see that as something I'm going to aspire to, after I die. And so then I began to understand that the metaphors of the pleasures of paradise were actually very centered on what a desert Arab might aspire to, especially in 7th century Arabia. And because also when I was living in Malaysia, they had these sidewalks with all this drainage system underneath, because it's the tropics, people. It is full of lush gardens and lots of rain. And if you do not build your cities in such a way that all that rain is siphoned off into these, what they call monsoon drains. They're drains that are like bigger than roadways. You have them in LA, as a matter of fact. So it's not like just in Southeast Asia. And I thought, oh, there are the rivers flowing underneath. It was like another one of those things where when you see the literal thing, you realize something about what the metaphor is referring to. But if you live in the desert, the idea of lush gardens and rivers flowing underneath, wow, you can imagine. So to me, those two things are very parallel. The Hur Line and the lush gardens, they are very context specific. And that is how I began to align my studies of things like, hermeneutics and the discourse of theology, how I began to align those things together. And I understood instead that paradise is an ultimate, unconditional experience or state of bliss. And that whatever is the source of that bliss for you, as you understand it from your physical living reality today, is what manifests. But it doesn't even have to be related to things, gardens and girls. It could be related to the sense of peace that comes from at-one-ment. And in fact, that was a major motivation for me, because although the Qur'an explains all these details about paradise, it also says that everything in existence will disappear illa wajhillah, except for the continents of Allah. And there you go again with regard to the metaphor and the literal. It says wajhallah, which is the same word we use for our face. And I do not believe some bug-eyed man is going to be out there, and that is the end all of this human existence, let alone my personal one. So that's when I understood that if it is the continents of Allah, that the most blissful state that you could be in is the state of at-one-ment with Allah, which they call atonement. At-one-ment. To be at one with Allah means that you are in this life, as well as a consequence of this life, experiencing a total render aside of any veils that keeps you from the absolute experience of the absolute and continuous presence of Allah. And I wouldn't want anything short of that if I were to look for an aspiration. Of course, I like gardens. I mean, I do live in Indonesia, but I have experienced enough gardens, and I will continue to experience them, and I'll continue to love them, I imagine. I have experienced enough gardens to know that that ain't it, capital I-T. Because that garden can come and go. It can be bug infested, it can not get enough water, it can dry out, it can show that I don't have a green thumb, whatever it is. The garden is just too mundane, too earthbound, and too materially limited for me to say that would be why I will be a good person on this earth. But for me, a law of the transcendent, one day we'll talk about a law, the imminent, the present. To me, to be at one with my creator, the source of all life, divine spirit, Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is a notion of bliss to me that is never ending. As a Sufi, as a practicing Sufi or an aspiring Sufi, and again, I said I was inspired to do this listening to my sheikh. I like the definition of Sufism as the spiritually impatient. Because Muslims in general believe if you do good, you do your worship and, et cetera, that you will experience this presence of Allah in the afterlife. And Sufis are thus spiritually impatient. They want to experience that presence of Allah right here, right now. And that's when I understood, in part, that heaven is not a place that you go to, it's not located in the sky, but it's a state that you achieve. But, and this is where I have to kind of, throw in the hell part of it, you don't achieve it just by wishing for it. You achieve it by aligning your life with the divine will, with that presence of Allah. And what does it mean to align your life with the divine will? It means to, as they say, obey Allah. Unfortunately, many people interpret obey Allah only in the literal sense of doing your 5 prayers and saying Shahada and giving zakat and all that stuff, and that the absence of doing that means that you're not obeying. And actually, I don't see obedience as, again, so literal. Instead, I see it as aligning your every breath, your every action, your every thought, your every sensation, aligning it with the blissful goal that you say you aspire to, Allah, aligning everything with Allah. And when you align everything with Allah, it means you align with the ultimate truth. And not only does it mean you can't be a liar, but also you can't live a deceptive, manipulative, fear-driven kind of life. And trust me, that's enough of a incentive that, you get a lifetime to do it in kind of thing, So to me, heaven is a doorway to a experience, an eternal experience of at-one-ment with Allah, but you do not achieve that by being sneaky and underhanded and deceitful and manipulative and lying and that kind of thing. Because if you do those types of things, then you end up further and further away from Allah, which of course the Qur'an does describe in great detail, that the chastisement of hell is an experience of despair, that you despair of the closeness to Allah and that kind of thing, and you also despair of closeness to other people, because it's described as ultimate experience of isolation and aloneness. And I remember once when I thought, wow, the metaphors of the fire and everything, wonder if the fire is only hot, like, is it, only ever described as heat. And I did some research on it. And, in fact, because I'm so miserable in the cold, that I thought hell for me would be the cold. And, so that's where I would despair the most. I worked on specific things that would come up with regard to these metaphors of heaven and hell, until I understood that these were all parts of the technique of the Qur'an given to us through the beloved Prophet Muhammad from Allah to guide us, that these were tools, techniques, and that they are meant to align with the pursuit of happiness, the tendency of humans to according to all kinds of psychological research and observation, to want to experience pleasure. And that the experience of pleasure is a really, 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 really powerful incentive. The short answer of it is that you can experience heaven and hell before you die, and that if your life trajectory has moved towards a fulfillment of your divine purpose, and your purpose can only be for you to take whatever it is that Allah has given you, resources, circumstances, etc., a body. If you use those things towards the fulfillment of your divine purpose, which is to worship Allah, and you cannot worship Allah unless you do that worship on this earth, and therefore it means to do good on this earth, that if you align your life with that purpose, which is a purpose towards the truth as you can experience it and demonstrate it, then you will achieve, quote unquote, a goodly reward. And if you have used your life to be harmful to others, to be a cheat and a liar, a thief, by that I don't mean, I stole a piece of bubble gum when I was 5 years old or 6 or whatever age I was, and I remember it. I bought 5. I paid for 5, but I took 6. I remember it, and I thought, oh, am I going to be a thief the rest of my life? So there you go. So if you use your life to take what is not yours, and trust me, I don't believe it's a single piece of gum, but it is, bigger than that. If you use your life for these types of nefarious purposes, you will end that life and be further and further away from Allah. So my perspective of heaven and hell still requires of me amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar, that is the fulfillment of what is good, just, and known, and the resistance of what is oppressive and negative and harmful. There's still an ethical obligation in my perception of heaven and hell. In fact, that obligation is even greater because it's not done in a mathematical formula. You know, like if I do these 5 salats and I do these 30 days of fasting and I make this Hajj and blah, blah, blah. Instead, it is at the deepest core of my ethical being, and it cannot be betrayed by trickery that I can use in the external world in order to pretend to be good for the sake of having others affirm my goodness, of which one day maybe I will share with you my favorite long hadith about these states. So I do not believe in a literal place in the sky that's going to be heaven. That's, some people die and go to after the judgment. I do not believe in a literal hell, which is a place that people will go to because they have led a negative life and been harmful, to others and often quite intentionally. But I do believe in the states of heaven and hell. I believe them to be very real, and I believe there to be consequences of everything that you do. So do good, try hard. See you next time. Salam alaikum.